the family. Anyway, thank you very much. I'll see you next week. Hey, welcome to First Chapter Podcast. My name is Larry Hoy, the biker writer legend, and I'm here to open you up to some new books. We'll be reading the first chapter of one of my favorite books. So, without further ado. All right, so this week I've got a treat for you. This is Mihalis by John Stryvant. Maybe there's another name out there. Anyway, let's jump into the back of it. Mihalis, the back cover. 20 years ago, his father saved the world, or so the history books will probably say once someone gets around to writing them. All Mihalis knows is the world he's been raised into. It's not that bad a world as things go. He has a big, loving family, but there's an ongoing war that promises to be ongoing for a good many years to come. Raised to the blade by his mother and taught not only her ways, as well as a good many of the ways of her people, but also the ways of his father's other wives, as well as the ways of his magic. Mihalis has had a very thorough education, even if a fair deal of that education is in the arts of war. But all he really wants to do is to prove himself, to go out into the world and show that, yes, he is his father's son, and yes, he is his own man, to find his own way in the world. Now, to be fair, there's a warning label. Let's check it out. Warning. Mihalis does contain many of those things that previous series was known for. Bad jokes, poor modern culture references, obscure song references, violence, and yes, what you've all been waiting for, sex. Now, some people don't need to understand that these warnings are done as much as a joke as a spoiler alert, to alert the prudes out there, like all modern science fiction and urban fantasy stories. There is sex in the story. Heaven forbid that these quivering, fragile flowers should read any modern romance. I dare say they'd die straight away. But we shall not let them ruin our fun now, shall we? Enjoy. All right, let's jump right into it. First chapter, Mihalis by John Stryvant. Mad Minute. The door in front of him exploded into pieces, the splinters blown into the room before him. Go, 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 go! Steen yelled to the command circuit, but he was already in motion. First through the doorway, gun up, he fired a 3-round burst into each target as soon as he acquired them. Shuffle stepping forward, careful of his footing as the rest of the team swarmed in behind him, forming up into a semicircle as they moved into the room. He felt more than saw Stern's rifle muzzle poking over his left shoulder as Stern put a hand on his back to let him know he was right on his ass. Steen hated it when he leapt into the room first, but he had the routine down now, and honestly, he made a better bullet sponge. Not only that, they were taking return fire. The devils hadn't known that they were coming, even if they had heard Wink and Stern setting the charges on the heavy metal fire door, they'd still had less than a minute to react. He swapped out magazines, picking targets and shooting. Damn, how many are down there? Woz, another of the old-timers, called out over the radio. Fewer than there were a moment ago, Mac joked as they moved carefully through the underground complex. And it was a complex. He had no idea where it'd come from, and he doubted anyone else did. Sten had gotten the report, and he was the team leader. After all, it had been flagged down by the local shop as serious. So they'd flown in last night, got the briefing, then come out just after the sun had set to operate under the cover of darkness. Hit! Someone gurgled. Jack's down, someone else said, and the whole line shifted slightly to make up for the loss of a team member. Steen's hand disappeared from his back, and he let go of his own rifle to throw spells. He wasn't sure what he'd gotten Jake until someone told him. He'd have to assume there was a magic user in the room. He didn't have a lot of magic yet. He was still pretty damn young, but he had a lot of multipliers, and he'd learned a few tricks. He led off with a cone of fire and swept it across the devils. Normally, using fire in an enclosed space was a bad idea because you needed oxygen to breathe. But it was the quickest way to find a devil magic user in a crowd was to spray them with fire and to see who had a shield up. He'd learned that one from Stuart, who was still doing combat protocols and raids when he wasn't teaching magic or enchanting stuff. For a fox, Stuart was an incredible badass, and even the Marines were afraid to give him shit. There! He saw a fire behind him. He saw the fire bend around what looked to be something like a cross between a lesser Mendre and a Tiga Takada. He dropped the flame spell and immediately peppered it with a missile spell that was so good at blowing by the shields to get its attention. Fourth from the left, that one looks like a Mandre with the gland problem, he called over the comms as he pulled his rifle back up by the sling, and then pumped and fired the grenade launcher slung under the rifle at it. The grenades were actually metal shield breachers that fired a cone of something like iron fletches when they impacted a shield. Against a human, they were annoying. Against a devil, they were painful. Half the group turned and concentrated their fire. Shields had limits, especially if they weren't maintained. His job was to stop the devil from maintaining it while the others took it down and killed the devil magic user. He tossed another missile spell and then followed up with a dispelling spell, and then turned back to the devils that were now charging them as the others finally broke through the shield and turned the devil behind it into chopped meat. He actually got a bit of a rush from that one when it died. He could only guess it had been a bit more powerful than he thought. He burned through 3 more magazines until there was nothing rushing at them anymore. "How's Jake?" someone called. "Alive, but down for the count. I got him," Sten said. "Now let's find out just what the hell we walked into here. This was supposed to be a basement. A single basement. Keep your wits about you. Keep your weapons up. Advance." They moved carefully through the room towards the exit on the far side, making sure everything they came to was dead, and then through the exit into the hallway beyond, changing formation to deal with the narrower space. He crouched so the rank behind him could fire over his head as needed, and it was needed, as several times they were rushed by groups of devils. Twice he had to stick his hand behind him as he'd run out of magazines, and one of the guys in back gave him one of theirs. Every time they came to a side entrance, they had to check the rooms out. Each of those investigations started off with a grenade, followed by a lot of heavy fire. He was on the front row now, so he had to trust the guys behind him. They were all pros, so he wasn't too concerned. When they got to the end of the hallway, Winks and Stern ran up to slap charges on it, Stern with Jake's unconscious body on his back. They all ducked into the side rooms as the blast triggered, and then came out and charged into the large room before them. Holy Mother of God! One of the werewolves gasped as they took in the sight before them. It was a devil nursery. "I'll tell her you were asking about her," he quipped as the sharpshooters in the group picked off the remaining attendants. He scanned the room. All the exits from it appeared to be barred or barricaded. The concrete floor had been removed, and there was obviously devil eggs planted everywhere. "You know, I've heard these things, but I've never expected to actually see one," said Cal, the werewolf next to him. "How do we get rid of it?" "It'll take half the team, and we'll head back to the vehicles and get the jerry cans off the back. Then we'll pour gasoline over everything and light it up," said Stan. "Mihalis, can you let your dad know what we found here?" Don't we have radios for that?" "Mihalis!" Steen growled. "On it," he said with a sigh, saving his rifle. He closed his eyes in a minute. He closed his eyes a minute and concentrated. "Mike, what are you doing here?" Zetra, one of his stepmothers, was talking to another lioness he didn't recognize. Renee was chatting with someone else, but he waved her off. Mom, tell Dad we've uncovered a hidden breeding ground. We're following up reports of what was supposed to be a small infection in Ohio, about 8 miles south of Dayton. How bad? About an acre? It's all underground in some sort of hidden bunker. I need to get back. We're going to light it up. Okay? Mihalis broke his meditation and opened his eyes. He'd been gone maybe 20 seconds. Nothing had changed. Waz was in command with Sten gone, and they set up a perimeter and a watch. You could never be sure when it came to devils. The occasional gunshot meant either something had moved or someone had thought it had and didn't want to take any chances. 15 minutes later, Stern showed up minus Jake and 2 others carrying a couple of gas cans, so there were several more on the team. Mihalis, you like being first? Grab one of them and help me spread it out. Yes, sir, Mihalis said with a sigh. Slinging his rifle, he took one of the cans from Stern, jogged to the other side of the room, and took a moment to figure out where he wanted to pour out the gas. What's he mad about at you for this time? Jenny, one of the female werewolves on the team, asked him in a hushed voice as she poured gas out a few rows over. I got in front of him, Mihalis sighed. Why'd you do a thing like that? She asked with a snort. Because, he almost said, because he's old, or because I came back, both of which were the reasons he'd done it, but instead he opted for something a bit more diplomatic. A skill his older brother, Steen Jr., or S.J., had been trying to teach him for some time now. It's a lion thing, he said instead. The whole lead from the front thing. But you're not the leader here. Yeah, well, you know, my dad, he said with a weak smile. Jenny snorted. Yeah, big shoes to fill there. Don't envy you at all. I'm surprised they let you on the team. You're what, 17? Ask the older guys and gals how old they are when they started doing this stuff. All of them were like 14 or 15. Well, yeah, but we were slaves and nobody cared if we lived or died, Waz said, coming over to check the progress. Things are different now. Everyone gets a regular, normal life. Mihalis snorted. Not if you're me, you don't. Oh, you don't have it that hard, Mike, Waz said. It's not that, Waz. It's not that at all. Trust me on that. It's not that at all. Whatever. That looks good. Let's get out of here before someone lights a match. Nodding, they followed Waz back, and the entire group made their way down the hallway towards the first room. Steen pulled out an incendiary grenade, pulled the pin, and threw it down the hallway into the nursery at the far end. It lit off with a loud whoosh, and the breeze coming from the door outside they'd entered through turned into almost a wind. Let's go, Steen said, and they tromped out of the back to their vehicles. Steen grabbed Mihalis and dragged him to the back of the group as they walked. Why did you jump in front of me like that? And please don't give me that it's a lion thing bullshit you gave Jenny. Mihalis sighed. Because what's the worst that can happen to me? Honestly. Plus, it's not like I'm all that important. You are, okay? So that's why I did it. That's why I keep doing it. Besides, I found that magic of theirs, or that mage of theirs, and I helped. The worst thing that can happen is I get home, and your old man gives me the ass chewing to end all ass chewings. That's what. And what the hell is this not important shit? Gods, I haven't heard a whine like that since I worked for the councils and had to deal with their kids. Yeah, well, that's why I want to be here. Because at least when I'm out here, I'm contributing to the goal. I'm not Sean's kid or that black lion. I'm just another guy on the team doing his job. Nothing less, nothing more. Is there really anything wrong with that? Steen gave him a look. I think that's the kind of conversation you need to be having with your father. It's not like he can do anything, Mihalis said with a sigh. Of course he can. He can give you a little brother, Stein said with a chuckle. But you did do good out there, and even if I almost shot you in the back when you jumped in front of me. Next time, talk to me before doing something stupid like that. Got it? Yes, Steen, Mihalis said with a nod. Great. Now let's get back to the shop and wait for pickup, Steen said, clapping him on the back. The local manager promised to feed us. The trip back to the local Bryanson's automotive shop wasn't a long one. The shop was closed for the night, but they handled their customer emergency so no one would be surprised to see some of the lights on. The place also had a large underground portion where visiting teams could relax away from prying eyes, where all the really important business was done. His father told him once years ago that the whole thing had been Steve and Sawyer's idea to cover what they were really doing, and had been a lot more successful than either of them had expected. He just liked that in the times he'd been out, there was somewhere he could have a small degree of anonymity. And his humanoid form was that of a dark elf, because his mother, he stood out. All his older sisters, Aliska, Kaleze, Naji, and Harmony, had taken her rather well to magic, with the extra training his mother had given all her children, as well as Deidre's. You wouldn't want to piss any of them off, and they made excellent magic support for the raid team, so many of the people at the automotive repair shops had seen dark elves before, especially as the eldest two had been doing this for almost 3 years now. He'd been through his mother's training as well, along with his sister, Cinnamern. The sword he carried wasn't a fairy sword like most of his other siblings had. It was a custom steel sword with a special iron core that was exposed to the very edge, a coming-of-age gift from Dalian's family, one of his other stepmothers, when he'd turned 16. He actually preferred it to the fey swords his brothers Sean and Troy had gotten when they'd came of age. The katana-like weapon fit in the dark elf fighting style so much better than the other swords. He'd fallen in love with them when he'd first seen his sister, Aleka's, and she'd let him try it out. All the dark elf sisters who passed their coming of age had one. His younger sister, Furia, and Hallie had just recently received theirs. Mind if I join you? Jenny asked, coming over to him, and finally sat down to eat. Not at all, he said with a faint smile. So, how many of these have you been on? Well, this was my second one as a combatant, he admitted. Really? She said, her eyes widening slyly. And you took lead like that? Mihalis smiled a little wanly and shrugged. Stern always gave me grief over it. Why? You definitely know what you're doing. This is like my 6th, and I'm still getting the hang of it. Oh, my mom's a bit of a hard-ass when it comes to training. I've been out on almost a dozen with my older brother. I just wasn't allowed to go inside. She nodded. That was nice of him. Yeah, SJ's a great brother. Our brother Troy's pretty cool, too. Oh, does he go on these raids as well? Nah, he works with the scouts. Why does he do that? Jenny asked, giving him a confused look. Because he's a cheetah lichen and is just about the fastest thing on 4 legs. Well, you're a lion, so how's your brother a cheetah? Mihalis smiled. Lions often have prides? I have 6 stepmothers, I guess you could say, and Troy and SJ's mother, well, Roxy's a cheetah. She frowned. SJ's a cheetah too? No, he's a lion. My mom's a dark elf. It's complicated. Just accept it. He gave her a slight smile. Most of my brothers and sisters are what their mothers are. Me and SJ, though, we're lions. And a few of my sisters are lionesses. Now I'm afraid I have to ask how many brothers and sisters you have, she said with a smile. A lot. And we get on well for the most part. So, if you're a lion, why do you go around looking like a dark elf? Well, they don't have any armor in my size yet, so this doesn't resize, he said, tapping on the clamshell breastplate fairy armor he was wearing. What about you? I'm surprised you don't know about any of this. I mean, it's because of who my dad is. It's like everybody knows our life story. Oh, I grew up in outside Vegas with one of the smaller packs down by the border. My father met your dad once years ago, did some work for him or something. And when I started looking for something to do with my life, he told me to come up here and make something of myself. So I did. And after a year in the infantry, which I can get pretty boring, let me tell you, I volunteered for this, and here I am. A big family? Not really. Two brothers, one older, one younger, a younger sister, a bunch of cousins. Not much more than that. They talked for a while, and when the V-23 Goshawk, a fanjet version of the Vernable Osprey, came to pick them up much later that night, under the cover of darkness and some serious silence spells, they sat together in the back and talked some more. The flight home was a long one. The sun was coming up as they landed. Jenny had fallen asleep with her head on his lap. She woke up when they shut the engines down, sitting up and stretching in a very enticing manner. Want to come back to my rack and catch some sleep? She asked with a wink. Just as long as you're not asking because of who my father is or what I am, he said with a bit of a sigh. I'm doing it because you're hot and I'm horny, she admitted with a leer, and he was able to sense that she definitely felt that way. You did pretty well for a guy on his second mission. Personally, I think that deserves a reward, don't you? Well, in that case, he said, sweeping up both of their packs with his left hand and putting his right hand around her, he followed the rest of the team down the ramp and out the back, where his father was standing, apparently waiting for him. Oh, shit. What? That's my dad. I think he might be a little upset with me. Why is that? I'm not supposed to go on these raids by myself. You should have heard him the last time. Does anyone else on the team know? No, I lied. Just then his father saw him, and he smiled, and then frowned, and then threw his hands up in the air. Mihalis, when you're rested and done with your new friend, I expect you to find me, Sean said with a hint of a growl. Yes, father. Damn, he's huge, Jenny said as they watched Sean turn and walk away. Yeah, he is. Do you get that big? Maybe if you're nice to me, I'll show you, Mihalis said with a smile. Now, where's your rack? All right, so that's first chapter of Mihalis. Want to thank John for setting me up with the book. Just got back from LibertyCon. That's why I missed last week, and I'm a little sunburned going. But had a good one, John. Thank you very much. And if you get the opportunity, the links are down below. Drop by, go pick up Mihalis, and give John a thank you for sending one out to the cause. Anyway, see you next week. That was first chapter. Podcast by Larry Hoy, the biker writer legend. If you'd have another book you'd like to hear on first chapter, please drop me an email. And if you are an author and you've got a book that you'd love to share, I'd love to read it. So please reach out to me. If you could also have the opportunity, a great way to support me in this channel. Of course, I'm on YouTube, Larry Hoy Author. Find me on Facebook. Same thing, Larry Hoy Author. It's the top of the page. And of course, jump into my book series, Hit World. Boom, there it is. Hit World, the book series. I've got Demon's Kiss out there and Bullet for Shooter. It's a great series. Can't wait to bring you into the family. Anyway, thank you very much. I'll see you next week.